talking to you this week out of Matthew chapter 2. And in celebration of Christmas, we're talking about the Magi. Now, a few questions have come up. First of all, were the Magi three? I don't know. It could be more, it could be less. Some people have asked, did the Magi show up at the manger on Christmas? I don't really think so. I think that the Magi actually showed up later on because you read that Mary was in a house. But why do we tie the Magi in with Christmas? Well, because the whole thing kind of happened probably within the same week. And honestly, and this might offend some people and offend some Christians, that's fine with me. I like getting people mad every now and then. Christmas actually, it could have taken place December. It could have taken place in the spring. Some people say, well, you know that Jesus couldn't have been born in December because of the sheep or the shepherds being out in the field and everything. I mean, that's a possibility, but honestly, they have different season setups than we do, so maybe not. Maybe it was December, maybe it wasn't. You know that Hanukkah actually was celebrated, and Jesus celebrated Hanukkah. It was celebrated during this time of the year already. So, whether it was or not is not an issue to me. I like celebrating Christmas right now. It makes sense. Well, it's totally commercial and all this kind of stuff. Well, that's great. You know why? Because a lot of people do really well and are blessed because of Jesus coming to this earth. And I have no problem with that, because ultimately, if you say the word Christmas, you can't leave the word Christ out of it. So, the Magi, who were these guys?
Who are you?
We are three wise men.
What?
We are three wise men.
Well, what are you doing creeping out?
If you watched my last message, you learned they were men that were of the caste of kingmakers. These were men that were scientists, they were scholars, they were educated, and we learned also that they were powerful men. Walking into the courts of Herod and demanding of him where the king of the Jews was. I mean, these were men, powerful men, from this distant land, and they bring these gifts to go and worship before baby Jesus. And it's an amazing story when you look at it. I'm going to read it here again. In Matthew chapter 2, verse 1, it says, "Now when Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod the king, behold, the Magi from the east arrived in Jerusalem, saying, Where is he who is born King of the Jews? For we saw his star in the east and have come to worship him." And gathering together, when Herod the king had heard this, he was troubled, and all of Jerusalem with him. And gathering together all the chief priests and the scribes of the people, he began to inquire of them where the Christ would be born. And they said to him, "In Bethlehem of Judea, for so it had been written by the prophet, And in you, Bethlehem, land of Judea, you are by no means least among the rulers of Judea. For out of you shall come forth a ruler who will shepherd my people, Israel." Then Herod secretly called the Magi, and ascertained from them when the star had appeared. And he sent them to Bethlehem, saying, "Go, make careful search for the child, and when you have found him, report to me, that I too may come and worship him." And having heard the king, they went their way, and lo, the star which they had seen in the east went on before them, and it came until it stood over where the child was. And when they saw the star, they rejoiced exceedingly with great joy. And last week I said that actual word is overjoyed. They were overjoyed. And they came into the house where the child was with Mary his mother, and they fell down and worshipped before him. And opening up their gifts of treasures, or actually it says they fell down and they worshipped him. They actually worshipped this baby Jesus. And they opened up their treasures, and they presented to him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Now, the interesting thing about this is, how did they find Jesus? And this is what I want to talk about in my message today. How did they find Jesus? They followed a star. They followed a star, and then when you read here, in verse 12, it says, "But having been warned by God in a dream not to return to Herod, they departed for their own country in another way." They followed a star, and then they were taught in a dream. Think about this for a second. A new star was born. Absolutely, totally different than any other star that had been there. Some people call it the Star of David, the Star of Judah. The reason why they would call it the Star of Judah is because Numbers prophesied that out of Judah a star would rise. So, this star. And also, God talked to them in a dream. It's interesting to me, this is the part that blows me away. This is what's interesting to me. People were more in tuned back then than we are today. When you read this, and this was interesting, God instructs, if you read the first 2 chapters of Matthew, there are 6 times that God talks to people in dreams. Isn't that, to me, that's amazing. But my question is, when was the last time we were brave enough to listen to a dream? when God gave us a dream, that we are brave enough to step out in faith and follow that dream. When was the last time we were brave enough to take a step of faith, to follow something different, to follow something unique, to follow something that is out of the ordinary because it was God? What was this star? And I spoke about it last week. In Numbers it said a star would come. And even in Micah it says that this one that would come would be our peace. Daniel had given these magi a promise of peace. You know what's interesting? Out of Bethlehem, they followed the Star of David to the city of David to see the king that King David was promised by God. That prophecy that the Messiah would come and sit on the throne of David, that he would be a descendant of David, that he would be the rightful ruler over Israel. And they had this hope. People of that time, hope was, you imagine that the Romans were oppressing them. The Romans were beating them up. Every day they had to deal with this oppression of this world power. Even to the point to where they appointed their kings, appointed their high priests. It was totally just oppression. But deep inside of them they had a hope that someone would come and make a difference. The Messiah was prophesied to come. And here walks these wise men. And I love how when Herod calls all the chief priests, it says that all of Jerusalem was troubled. They were wow, what's going on here? What were the Magi following? Were they just following a star? So what were they following? Were they just following a star? Well, if you know anything about science, you know what a star is. A star is not some heavenly creature or something. It's something out there that's like a sun. I mean, if you want to get down to it, it's like a ball of gas and matter and everything. It's not. But what were they really following? Was that it? Was it just a star? No. What they were following hope. A hope that they learned honestly from Daniel way back when, that was passed along through the caste of these wise men. They listened to dreams. They followed stars. Some people probably would have thought they were strange. They were eccentric. They were crazy. They were too out there. The wise men, to some people, probably seem like fools. But I like how Jesus says this. He says, wisdom is proved right by her children. Because these wise men that seemed foolish, they ended up finding Jesus. They ended up finding the Messiah. Are you ready to push out into the unknown? Are you ready to take a step of faith and follow a star? Listen to a dream. Go outside of your comfort zone to do something different. Because I'll tell you this, that until you can take a step of faith, you're not going to find Jesus. Jesus isn't found in just, the easy things, the normal things, the things that sometimes the things that Jesus wants you to do. Sometimes when you're following Christ, the steps you need to take are the out of the ordinary ones. They're the weird ones, the ones that seem strange to other people. It seems strange to listen to a dream, to be warned in a dream, to be taught in a dream. But you read here in the first 2 chapters of Matthew, the first 2 chapters of the New Testament, God does it 6 times. It's strange to follow a star, but the wise men did, and they found Jesus. It's strange to believe that some obscure man 2,000 years ago, hung on a cross, is what saved the whole world. Are you brave